Your son is so pitiful, to have to live with such a selfish mother. Chloe, the stranger sitting next to Jacob, said acidly amidst the audience. I was stunned into silence. In my hands, the small gift box with the basketball shoes I had saved up for months trembled violently. Today was supposed to be the best day, Jacob's birthday, the day I wanted to surprise him, to give him the gift he had long dreamed of. But in an instant, everything turned into a nightmare. Jacob sat there, his face hesitant, his eyes flickering. I clearly saw the confusion, even doubt in his eyes. The entire stand seemed to fall silent, then buzzed. Glances of pity, scrutiny, and suspicion began to turn towards me. I clenched the box in my hand, feeling as if thousands of knives were piercing my heart. Why would a stranger dare to ruin the sacred moment between me and my son? But I didn't expect. That was just the beginning. What Chloe did next not only embarrassed me, but also almost took away my only son. I am Nancy, 38 years old, a single mother. My life is summarized in 2 words: making a living. I worked as a cashier in a supermarket during the day and took on extra cleaning jobs at a small eatery at night. My back always ached, my hands were calloused, but I never allowed myself to stop. Because I had only one reason to live: Jacob, my 14-year-old son. I clearly remember the day my husband left. Jacob was only 8, and he asked me tearfully, "Mom, where did Dad go? Is he coming back?" I bit my lip until it bled, holding my son tightly. "It's okay, honey. From now on, you only have Mom." From that day on, I vowed that no matter how hard it was, I would raise Jacob into a good person. Every morning, when I saw him sleeping soundly with his innocent face, I found new strength. I didn't need luxurious happiness, only for my son to grow up in love. But life isn't easy. How many times I secretly hid my tears because I didn't have enough money to buy Jacob a new pair of sneakers. He grew quickly, his shoes worn thin, torn on the sides, but he still smiled. "It's okay, Mom. These shoes are still usable." Jacob's resilience made me both love and hurt him even more, and that's what made me determined, at all costs, to give him a gift he deserved. Jacob was different from other children his age from a young age. While his friends often dreamed of being superheroes or famous singers, my son had only one simple dream: to become a basketball player. I remember a summer afternoon when he was 10. The sun was scorching. The elementary school's cement court was so hot it seemed to steam. Yet Jacob tirelessly threw old basketballs into the rusty iron hoop. Every time the ball went in, he raised his hands and shouted as if he had just scored in a major game. I stood outside the fence, smiling through tears. "Mom, do you see?" "One day I'll play in a huge stadium with lots of people cheering," Jacob said, his eyes shining like stars. I nodded, trying to hide the pang in my heart as I looked at the tattered shoes on his feet. Those shoes were so worn that the stitches had come undone, but Jacob cherished them like treasures. He often said, "As long as I have a ball and shoes, I can play. I don't need anything else." In reality, I knew Jacob secretly dreamed of a genuine pair of Air Jordans, the shoes he often gazed at in the display case of the sports store. Every time we passed by, his eyes would linger for a long time, then he would turn and smile at me as if to reassure me. "I'm just dreaming, Mom. Don't worry." That smile cut into my heart like a knife. As a mother, I hurt because I couldn't immediately give my child what he deserved. But I had secretly promised myself, on Jacob's 14th birthday, at all costs, I would give him a surprise. The lives of my son and I were no different from a long battle. By day I worked, and by night I had to tutor Jacob, cook, and do laundry. There were months when the rent, electricity, and tuition fees piled up, suffocating me. Many nights, I could only eat instant noodles, giving Jacob my meager portion of rice. Yet, strangely, my son never complained. Instead, he would often make me laugh. "Mom, when I become a famous football player, I'll buy you a big house with a swimming pool. You won't have to worry about paying rent anymore." I burst out laughing, tears welling up. "As long as you are healthy and happy, I don't need any swimming pool." On nights when the electricity went out, the two of us would sit by candlelight, with Jacob holding his old guitar and singing cheerfully. I watched him quietly, feeling that the world was still warm. For me, simple happiness was just sitting beside Jacob, listening to his laughter echo in the empty room. Once, Jacob secretly saved half of his meal to take to school the next morning. When I asked, he grinned. "Mom, you eat it all, I'm full." But I knew the boy was learning to share even the smallest morsels with me. It was those difficult years that made our mother-son bond stronger than anything. I always thought no one could break this connection, until Chloe appeared. Every time I saw Jacob standing in front of the sports store, his eyes lighting up as he looked at the basketball shoes on the shelf, my heart ached. I knew clearly that it wasn't just an item. It was his dream, his childhood aspiration. That night, after finishing my shift cleaning the restaurant, I sat alone in my small rented room. The dim yellow light cast shadows on my expense ledger. The numbers piled up: electricity, water, tuition fees. I bit my pen, calculating over and over until my hair turned gray. And then I made up my mind. I would cut back on all possible expenses, just to afford that gift. And instead of taking the bus, I chose to walk several kilometers to save a few small coins. Instead of buying new clothes, I wore my worn-out uniform repeatedly. Each day I saved a little and put it into a small tin box hidden under my pillow. Once, Jacob caught me counting change. He asked in surprise, "Mom, what are you saving up for?" I quickly smiled and reassured him. "Oh, I want to save for our future, yours and mine." He hugged me tightly, his eyes shining with a brightness I would never forget. Every night, I dreamed of the moment I would give Jacob the gift box, seeing his face light up with pure joy. I was convinced it would be my son's happiest birthday, but I never expected that very moment would become the deepest pain of my life, because a strange woman named Chloe shattered everything. I remember that day clearly. Jacob's basketball game ended. The crowd rushed onto the court cheering. The atmosphere was lively. I clutched the gift box tightly, my heart pounding, ready to surprise my son. But as I got closer, a strange woman was already sitting next to Jacob. She wore a light blue dress, had a sweet smile, and her eyes sparkled as if she genuinely cared about my son. I paused for a moment. Who was she? Why was she next to Jacob? Chloe, as I later learned her name, started with gentle conversation, asking Jacob what he liked, complimenting his great game, even giving him a bottle of cold water. Jacob, being a kind child who lacked attention from adults other than his mother, immediately felt at ease. I walked closer and smiled politely. "Excuse me, who are you?" She smiled brightly. "Oh, I'm just a spectator. Coincidentally sitting next to your son. He's so cute." The words sounded normal, but the way Chloe looked at me, her assessing gaze, as if trying to scrutinize every wrinkle, every simple outfit I wore, sent a chill down my spine. Jacob, in his innocence, didn't notice. He eagerly told Chloe about his basketball dreams, about the games he longed to play. Chloe tilted her head, listening intently, nodding with interest. Watching this, I was happy that my son had someone to encourage him, but a vague sense of unease also arose, because I clearly felt this woman was not just a casual spectator. She entered our lives so naturally, so smoothly, as if she had been waiting to insert herself. Little did I know, it was from that sweet smile that a dark series of days for Jacob and me began. In the days following the game, I noticed a change in Jacob. He talked to me less, often stared blankly at his phone, sometimes smiling to himself. I was momentarily surprised, but then when I accidentally saw the name Chloe appear on the screen, my heart sank. Chloe? How did she get my son's number? One evening, I asked indirectly, Jacob, Mom sees you've been talking to someone named Chloe lately. Who is she? Jacob gave a forced smile. Oh, just a good friend, Mom. She cares about me, asks about my studies. I was speechless. A good friend? We weren't even close. Why did she have the right to interfere in my son's life like that? From then on, cracks began to appear. Chloe skillfully sowed seeds of sarcasm disguised as concern in Jacob's mind. I knew it, because I overheard it once myself when I went to pick Jacob up after practice. Chloe leaned down and spoke softly to Jacob, but loud enough for me to catch. Such a lovely boy, and yet he has to wear those worn-out shoes. It's a pity. If it were another mother, she would have sacrificed everything for you to have it all. Hearing that felt like a slap in the face. Jacob remained silent, just gave a weak smile, but I could clearly see the waver in his eyes. I stepped forward, awkwardly pulling my son away, my heart burning. Later, I discovered Chloe had also sent Jacob links to expensive basketball shoes with the message, "You deserve better things. Don't let anyone make you think you're not worthy." Day by day, Jacob grew more distant. The boy who used to hug me and whisper about school now often blurted out, "Mom, are you being too thrifty? I don't need to eat so frugally." Or worse, "If Dad were still here, I'd probably have everything." Those words pierced my heart like daggers. I knew Jacob wasn't to blame. He was just being manipulated. But the feeling of losing my son's trust, of being replaced by a stranger, left me breathless with sorrow. I started paying closer attention. Chloe would show up unexpectedly at basketball practices, at school, even in the neighborhood. Each time she'd pretend to care about Jacob, while her eyes would flick towards me with defiance. I understood. This was no longer a coincidence. Chloe was deliberately inserting herself, and step by step, she was sowing doubt, breaking the sacred bond between Jacob and me. One afternoon, I came home from work to find Jacob curled up in his room, his face unusually somber. I knocked gently and asked, "Son, what's wrong?" He didn't look at me, just quietly held out his phone. On the screen was a photo of a designer clothing shopping receipt costing nearly $500. In the corner of the receipt, the sender wrote, "Nancy bought this for me, but I don't have money for Jacob's shoes. Is that fair?" Signed, Chloe. I was stunned. A fake receipt, so blatantly false it made me choke with anger. I had never set foot in that store. Where would a luxury shopping spree come from? But for Jacob, a growing boy craving a pair of basketball shoes, that picture was like a knife cutting through his trust. "Mom, did you really spend money on yourself?" Jacob's voice trembled, but his eyes held disappointment. I quickly took his hand. "Honey, that's fake. I never did that. Every cent I earn is for you." But Jacob pulled his hand away and turned his back. That distant look hurt me more than 1,000 lashes. To make matters worse, Chloe was more cunning. Another time, she sent Jacob a video clip from a restaurant's camera, edited to show me receiving tips from customers and pocketing them. Chloe added a message. "Your mother always talks about sacrifice, but the truth is different. Don't be fooled." I was beside myself. It was true I received tips, but they were my legitimate earnings. I submitted them all to management. Yet in the edited clip, my actions were twisted into a scene of stealth and greed. Jacob looked at me, full of confusion. "Mom, are you hiding something from me?" My heart shattered. I tried to explain, but I knew, with the evidence Chloe had fabricated, all my words became mere excuses in his eyes. That night, I sat alone in the darkened room. The basketball shoes I had already placed under the bed still sat in their box. I touched them, tears streaming down my face. I wanted to give Jacob the biggest surprise, but now, what meaning did that surprise hold when the trust between us was crumbling? And I knew clearly it all stemmed from Chloe, a woman who seemed like a stranger, yet possessed the cruel ability to destroy the small world Jacob and I had built. In the following days, the distance between Jacob and me grew. My son no longer chattered about school, nor did he cuddle me before bedtime. Instead, he often went out, citing practice. But I knew half of that time was spent with Chloe. One time, I secretly followed him. My heart nearly stopped when I saw Jacob sitting in a cafe, opposite Chloe. She leaned forward, speaking to Jacob in a gentle tone, her hand resting on his shoulder like an intimate mother. Jacob smiled, his eyes filled with admiration, the look he once reserved only for me. I stood outside the glass, my hands clenched so tightly they drew blood. I felt like I was losing my son to a stranger. It all came to a head that evening. Jacob returned, his face cold and distant. He looked at me and uttered a sentence like a sharp knife. "Mom, maybe Chloe is right. You only think of yourself. You've never truly understood me." I was speechless, choked with emotion. 14 years of raising him, every drop of sweat, every sleepless night, now negated by the words of an outsider. In despair, I decided I had to uncover the truth. I began to investigate, to learn about Chloe. And then, the pieces of the truth sent a shiver down my spine. Chloe's appearance was no coincidence. She was a former employee of the company where I worked as a part-time accountant, fired for falsifying records that I had reported. It turned out, it was all a sophisticated revenge plot. Chloe didn't just want to humiliate me. She wanted to steal the most precious thing, Jacob's trust in his mother. I sat in silence for hours, tears streaming down my face. But deep down, that pain was slowly turning into a flame. If she thought she could easily break this mother-son bond, she was mistaken. I vowed to do everything I could to bring Jacob back and expose Chloe's true face to everyone. The parent-teacher conference at Jacob's school that day should have been as peaceful as any other time. I wore an old shirt, carefully brushed my hair, and clutched Jacob's academic file, ready to discuss with the teacher. I still believed that no matter how many storms life threw at us, this school would remain a safe space for Jacob. But as I entered the hall, my heart sank. Chloe was already there. She sat right next to Jacob, her hand resting on his chair as if to assert her position. Many other parents whispered, looking at me with confused eyes, and Jacob, his head was bowed, avoiding my gaze. As soon as the homeroom teacher began to speak, Chloe interjected. "Actually, I have something to comment about Jacob. The boy has potential, but unfortunately, he doesn't receive enough support from his family." The entire room fell silent. I stood up abruptly, my face burning. "Excuse me, who are you? This is a parent-teacher conference. By what right do you speak about my son?" Chloe gave a light laugh, her eyes full of defiance. "The right of someone who genuinely cares. I see Jacob needs more than what you're giving him." Those words were like a splash of cold water to my face in front of dozens of parents and teachers. I heard whispers. What kind of mother lets others speak for her? Perhaps she really doesn't take care of him. Jacob remained with his head down, his hands clenched tightly. My heart ached, but instead of crying, I looked directly at Chloe, my voice trembling but firm. "I've raised Jacob for 14 years. Every drop of sweat, every dollar I earned was for him. Don't think you can replace me with a few sweet words." The atmosphere in the room was tense. Some parents looked at me with sympathy. Others shook their heads in doubt. Chloe still smirked, but I knew this public battle had only just begun. Before I could even sit down, Chloe stood up, her voice sweet but loaded with implication, addressing the entire hall towards me. "I don't want to interfere in anyone's private affairs, but there are things I've witnessed that make me truly worried about Jacob. A well-behaved, talented child, but he has to live in poverty and is even sometimes neglected." The room buzzed. I froze, my whole body trembling. Neglected? I had sacrificed everything. Every dollar earned was for Jacob. How could she fabricate such blatant lies? Chloe took a few papers out of her bag. I recognized them immediately. the fake receipts she had previously sent to Jacob. She held them up for everyone to see. Here, I happened to find out. While Jacob has to wear worn-out shoes, his mother spends nearly $500 on designer items. A mother like this, is she worthy of her child's trust? The whispers intensified. One parent shook her head. Unbelievable. Another pursed her lips. Poor boy. My face turned pale, my heart pounding erratically. I lunged forward, snatching the paper from Chloe's hand. This is fake. I've never spent money like this. This is fabricated evidence. Chloe still smiled, shaking her head in feigned pity. Nancy, you can fool outsiders, but the truth is Jacob saw it. I'm just speaking on his behalf. The entire hall turned their eyes towards Jacob. My son was flustered, his face flushed red, not daring to look up. I clearly saw the confusion in his eyes, his faith wavering. The sight tore at my heart. Another mother whispered, "We should reconsider, as this child is being negatively affected." I almost cried out, "No one loves and protects Jacob more than I do. Don't let an outsider fabricate stories and ruin my mother-son relationship." The atmosphere in the hall became thick. Some teachers frowned, demanding order, but doubtful glances still surrounded me. Chloe smiled victoriously, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. I realized that in this public battle, she had one step ahead of me, using lies to sow doubt in everyone's minds, and worst of all, in my own son's. I clenched the fake bill in my hand, my chest heaving. If I remained silent, Chloe would have an excuse to trample on my reputation further. I took a deep breath, looked her straight in the eye, and enunciated each word. "Chloe, you want to portray me as the villain in front of everyone, but I won't allow it. You claim to care for Jacob? Then you care by fabricating lies, by creating false evidence to slander his mother?" The entire hall was shaken. Chloe paused for a moment but immediately regained her composure, chuckling dismissively. "I am merely presenting the truth. If you are innocent, why should you be afraid?" I turned to all the parents, my voice trembling but resolute. For 14 years, I've worked 2 jobs, with no days off, just to provide for Jacob. I've never bought myself a new dress, never set foot in a designer store. You can believe this forged piece of paper, but Jacob knows who he grew up relying on through sacrifice. I looked towards Jacob, my eyes pleading. My son looked awkward, his hands clenched. I saw that he wanted to speak, but Chloe's lies were like a chain binding him, making him choke on his words. A teacher stood up, cutting through the stifling air. "Please, everyone, calm down. This is a parent-teacher meeting, not a courtroom. But I also want to be clear. Jacob is a diligent student, well-raised. No one has the right to insult his mother with unverified rumors." Those words made several parents nod. Their gazes softened, no longer so harsh. I seized the moment, my voice growing stronger. If Chloe truly cared, she would let my son and me resolve this with the truth, not with such a despicable ploy. And before everyone today, I affirm, I am Jacob's mother, and I will always be his sole support. Scattered applause broke the suffocating silence. Chloe forced a smile, her eyes darkening for a moment, but she still tried to appear calm. I knew I hadn't won, but at least, in this first public confrontation, I had stood my ground, and I also understood. Chloe would not stop. Her next attacks were sure to be more vicious. I hadn't even recovered from the stressful parent-teacher meeting when one morning the door to my rented room was knocked on fiercely. When I opened it, I saw 2 men in neat suits holding thick files. "Are you Nancy? This is a summons. You are accused of child abuse and neglect." It was as if lightning struck me. A summons. Abuse. Neglect. I shakily took the stack of papers, my vision blurring with the bold print. The accuser was none other than Chloe Anderson. My entire body went limp. How could a stranger so brazenly accuse me of such terrible crimes? But even more horrifying, within the file, Chloe had already prepared evidence, a photo of Jacob eating alone in a dark room, taken secretly through the window. A copy of a spliced video clip of me receiving tips at the diner, false witness testimony claiming Jacob was often heard crying from hunger. I threw the papers onto the table, my chest tightening. It was all fabricated, but so cleverly arranged, enough to convince anyone who didn't know me. That evening, Jacob looked at me quietly, his eyes filled with both worry and confusion. I knew Chloe must have whispered to him that his mother was about to be punished by the law. I clutched my face and sobbed, but the tears quickly dried. This was no longer just a fight to regain Jacob's trust, but a life-or-death legal battle. If I lost, I would lose my son forever. I stood up, wiped away my tears, and picked up my phone to call an old friend, a lawyer named Mark Evans. My voice trembled, but was firm. "Mark, I need your help. This is no longer a personal matter. I have to prove my innocence and expose the person who wants to destroy my family." Mark Evans, an old friend from law school, now a seasoned lawyer. As soon as he read through the file, he frowned. "Nancy, this is a blatant fabrication, but she prepared quite thoroughly. If we don't have contrary evidence, the court could easily believe these accusations." I asked shakily, "What should we do, Mark? I can't let them take Jacob away from me." Mark looked at me with determination. "We will counterattack. Every piece of Chloe's evidence has a loophole. I'll show you." He spread the file out on the table. Photo of Jacob eating alone in a dark room. Mark pointed out the detail that the light in the photo came from outside the window, proving it was a candid shot. He said, "We can request an examination of the metadata in the original file. It will reveal the time and device used for the photo. That's an invasion of privacy." The video clip of me receiving tips, Mark rewound and played it, then stopped at a frame where the hand of the person filming was reflected in a wall mirror. He tapped lightly on the screen. "Here, this is the proof. They spliced it to make receiving legal tips look like greed. As long as we get the original footage from the diner, we can turn the tables." False witness testimony. Mark shook his head with a wry smile. "This witness claims to have often heard Jacob crying from hunger, but cannot provide specific dates and doesn't live nearby. Testimony like this won't hold up." I sat there, both relieved and trembling. For the first time in weeks, I felt I wasn't alone. Mark held my hand, reassuring me. "Nancy, you have to be strong. The court won't just go by fake documents. What matters is that we can prove your love for Jacob is real, down to the smallest detail." He suggested I gather all the tuition receipts, hospital bills, and any documents proving I always took care of Jacob. In addition, Mark wanted to invite close neighbors and Jacob's teachers to be witnesses. I nodded, a new fire igniting within me. If Chloe thought she could defeat me through the law, then it was through the law that I would fight back and expose her deceitful mask. The day of the hearing arrived. I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding. Across the table, Chloe was composed, her expression as calm as someone who was certain of victory. Her lawyer presented the case clearly. "My client accuses Nancy of neglecting her son, spending money on herself, and failing to provide the minimum living conditions for Jacob. We have evidence, photos, videos, and witnesses." With every sentence he read, I felt like I was being stabbed. Jacob sat in the back row, his face tense. I knew my son was also torn. It was Mark's turn, and he stood up, his voice clear and strong. "Your Honor, that evidence is merely a fabricated product. Please allow me to present my case." He displayed an analysis of the photo's metadata on the screen, showing Jacob eating in a dark room. The result was clear. The photo was taken with Chloe's phone at 11 p.m., when I was working the night shift at the diner. The room buzzed with murmurs. Chloe's face paled slightly. Next, Mark presented the video from the diner, this time the original footage provided by the manager. The complete footage showed me openly receiving tips and then meticulously recording them. He pointed to the reflection in the mirror. The one secretly filming was Chloe. She edited the footage to make a legitimate action appear suspicious. Whispers spread throughout the room. Finally, Mark called Chloe's witnesses to the stand. When the judge asked about the time and date of when he heard Jacob crying from hunger, the witness became flustered and answered hesitantly. Under pressure, he blurted out, "I just signed it as requested. I really didn't know the details." A wave of shock swept through the room. Chloe's face lost all color, her eyes wide but unable to utter a word. Mark concluded with a firm voice. "This mother raised her son with all her sweat and tears. Those accusations are merely a smear campaign. I ask the court to deliver justice for Nancy." I sat there, tears streaming down my face, feeling both pain and relief. I didn't need glory. I just needed my son to see the truth. Jacob looked up, his eyes glistening. I knew deep down, his faith in me was starting to return. I thought that after the hearing, things would be somewhat clearer. But Chloe didn't stop. She knew that if the law couldn't defeat me, public opinion would be an even sharper weapon. In just one night, a series of anonymous posts appeared on social media. Mother neglects son to spend money on herself. Jacob, a talented boy held back by a selfish mother. Accompanying them were old, photoshopped, and distorted pictures of me and Jacob. In one picture, I was walking back to my rented room with a bag of groceries, but the caption read, "This mother frequently spends money on herself while her son wears torn shoes." Malicious comments poured down like a rain of knives. Poor boy. A mother like this deserves to have her parental rights revoked. Hope someone better replaces her. I trembled as I read each line. My heart was torn to pieces. I could endure hardship, but being slandered before thousands of unfamiliar eyes was too much. Jacob was even more confused. One evening, he handed me his phone, his voice trembling. "Mom, why do they all say that about you? Is it all true?" I hugged my son, but tears streamed down my face. How could I show Jacob the truth amidst this sea of fake news? Chloe still appeared, comforting Jacob in front of everyone, pretending to be his emotional support. I could clearly see her enjoying this moment, with public opinion on her side, while I was buried in mud. But I didn't know that, from within that public opinion, people would gradually rise to defend me. Those who had witnessed firsthand how I raised Jacob with all my love. In the early days, I was drowned in a sea of fake news and cruel sarcasm. I hardly dared to leave the house, fearing the disdainful looks from those around me. But then, something I didn't expect happened. One morning, Ms. Linda, my next-door neighbor, knocked on my door and showed me her phone. On the screen was a new post on social media. "Nancy, the mother who works 3 shifts to raise her son to success." The post included pictures Miss Eyes. Linda secretly took of me returning home late at night, exhausted but still carrying a bag of cheap food for Jacob. "I couldn't stand seeing them say false things about you. I will speak up about the truth I witness every day." Linda clasped my hand tightly. Not long after, Mr. Johnson, Jacob's gym teacher, also wrote a post. "Jacob is one of the most diligent and polite students. I know that behind him is the nurturing of a wonderful mother. Whoever slanders Nancy is wrong." The post spread rapidly, and numerous other students and parents commented, "That's right. I've seen Nancy waiting for Jacob in the rain to take him home. Jacob has always been well behaved. That couldn't come from an irresponsible mother." Each testimony was like a ray of light piercing the darkness. Public opinion began to divide. If before everyone had pointed their sharpest arrows at me, now a multitude of fair voices were gradually siding with me. Chloe was furious. She created more fake accounts to counterattack, continuing to spread defamatory information, but the more she tried, the more her falsehoods were exposed. People began to question, why is it that only Chloe speaks ill of Nancy, while everyone who has truly interacted with her affirms the opposite? Jacob watched quietly. I caught him sitting in front of the screen, his eyes brimming with tears as he read comments defending his mother. I knew the layer of doubt in his heart was slowly melting away, but Chloe wouldn't let go easily. She decided to launch a final public opinion attack, the most vicious one aimed directly at my honor and my motherhood. I thought everything was starting to clear up as neighbors, teachers, and friends began to stand by me. But Chloe refused to give up. She released a public opinion bomb that shook the entire community. One evening, social media was flooded with a video. In it, I appeared at a restaurant, harshly scolding a young employee. Chloe attached a message. "Is this the mother you are protecting? Someone violent, out of control, and who takes out all her stress on others. If she treats her employees like this, how do you think she treats Jacob when the door is closed?" A storm of indignation erupted. Unbelievable, she still has the audacity to act so kind. The poor child, he must be scolded often. A mother like this should have her parental rights revoked immediately. I felt my body go limp, clutching my head in despair. That video was real, but it had been maliciously edited. That day, I hadn't yelled at my employees. I was just urgently calling out when I saw cooking oil spilling near the stove, fearing an explosion. But Chloe had cleverly cropped out the dangerous scene, keeping only the part where I was shouting, turning me into an aggressive person. Jacob looked at me, his eyes hesitant. I clearly saw the fear and confusion in his eyes. My heart ached. Lord, how can he believe me? The following days were hell. When I went out, I received contemptuous glances. Some people hurled vicious words, an evil person pretending to be a saint. I returned home, collapsing at the door, feeling like the whole world was against me. Chloe, however, was different. She appeared online, feigning righteousness, proclaiming, "I am doing this for no personal gain. I only want Jacob to have a better life. Let the public speak up to protect this boy." Her words were like a spark, igniting the crowd's fury. I was cornered. All my efforts to protect my reputation and keep my son were now at risk of shattering because of one edited video. But in that moment of desperation, I understood. To survive, I couldn't just defend myself. I had to counterattack more fiercely, right where Chloe thought she was invincible, in the light of justice and before the eyes of the public.
On the day of the official trial, the sky was gray and heavy, mirroring my mood. I walked into the courtroom, my heart pounding, my hands ice cold. Before me stood Chloe, in an elegant dress, exuding confidence as if victory was already hers. She smiled faintly, her eyes sweeping over me, cold and challenging. Jacob sat in the back row, his face tense, his eyes heavy with unspoken emotions. My son hadn't fully sided with me, nor did he have the courage to stand against Chloe. That hurt and scared me. The judge banged his gavel and the trial began. Chloe's lawyer stood up, his voice firm. "Your Honor, we have ample evidence that Nancy is an authoritarian mother, emotionally abusive and neglectful of her son. This child has suffered enough. Chloe Anderson, the woman sitting here, is the one who truly cares for and protects Jacob." The courtroom buzzed. I heard the familiar murmurs, the heart-piercing judgments like daggers.
It was Mark's turn, my lawyer. He stood up, his gaze unwavering. "Your Honor, the accusations are nothing but a deceitful play. My client, Nancy, is a mother who has dedicated her entire life to her son. We will prove that every piece of evidence presented by the opposing side has been edited, fabricated, and staged." I sat there trembling, but as I heard Mark's confident voice, my heart warmed. This time, it wasn't just about saving myself, but also about protecting Jacob's belief in me. I had to fight to the very end. The judge called for the presentation of evidence to begin. Chloe smiled confidently, pushing a stack of documents toward the court. I looked at those stacks of forged papers, videos, and images, and my throat tightened. But I knew this time would be different. This time, I had the truth on my side. The trial had only just begun. but the atmosphere was so thick that all eyes were fixed on us. This would be the final battle, where justice would decide the fate of my son and I. The judge banged his gavel, signaling the plaintiff's side to begin their questioning. Chloe stood up, her demeanor gentle, but her voice clear and sharp. "I did not want to be here. I am only worried about Jacob. He has confided in me many times that he feels neglected by his mother, forced to live a meager existence." The courtroom buzzed. I looked at Jacob and saw his eyes waver. My heart ached. Chloe's lawyer brought out a false witness. He repeated the old script. I often heard Jacob crying from hunger. But this time, Mark stepped forward, refuting him with a barrage of questions. "You say you often heard it, but please tell me on what specific date and time." I don't remember clearly." "Where do you live? Do you live in the same neighborhood as Nancy?" "Actually, I only visited a few times." The audience began to murmur. The witness broke out in a sweat, stammering. Mark tapped lightly on the table and said with firm conviction, "Your Honor, this witness has no credible basis. This is merely a fabricated testimony." The air grew heavy with tension. I clenched my trembling hands, my heart pounding as I saw each piece of truth being dismantled. Immediately after, Mark called our witness, Miss Linda, the neighbor. She stepped onto the stand, her voice choked with emotion. "I have lived next to Nancy for many years. I saw her come home from work late at night, exhausted but still bringing food back for Jacob. Many times I even heard them laughing loudly in their small room. Nancy never neglected her son. On the contrary, she sacrificed so much that I often shed tears." Many people in the room nodded, their expressions changing. Chloe clenched her fists, trying to remain calm. Next, Mr. Johnson, Jacob's gym teacher, took the stand. He spoke with a clear voice. "Jacob is a polite, hard-working boy with clear aspirations. I am certain that this is the result of his mother's patient guidance. Anyone who met Nancy knows she never shied away from sacrificing for her son." The atmosphere in the room gradually shifted in my favor. I turned and met Jacob's gaze. His eyes were red. I saw in his eyes that hope was beginning to return. Not stopping there, Mark presented the original video footage from the diner, showing me in a panic, urging the staff to clean up spilled oil near the kitchen. The audio was clear. "Quick, wipe it up. The oil is near the fire. It's dangerous." The audience gasped. The image of me, from a fierce person in an edited clip, suddenly transformed into a woman worried about the safety of others. Chloe's face turned pale. She looked around, seemingly searching for an escape, but all eyes were now on her. No longer eyes of trust, but of suspicion and contempt. I sat there, tears welling up. For the first time after a long period of being slandered, I felt justice beginning to speak. The courtroom was dead silent. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Chloe, whose truth had just been exposed. She tried to maintain a smile, but her eyes were darting, the corners of her lips trembling. The judge adjusted his glasses and struck the gavel 3 resounding times. His voice was deep and clear. After reviewing all the case files, evidence, and testimonies, the court concludes the evidence provided by the plaintiff, Ms. Chloe Anderson, was all edited, fabricated, and has no legal validity. Conversely, my client, Nancy, has proven her love and responsibility towards her son. Chloe Anderson will be held accountable for defamation and damaging another's reputation. A wave of murmurs erupted throughout the room. I was stunned, tears streaming down my face. My shoulders trembled, not from fear anymore, but from relief after months of being pushed to the brink. Mark squeezed my shoulder gently and whispered, "Justice is on your side, Nancy." I turned to look at Jacob. My son jumped up from his seat and ran to hug me tightly in front of everyone. He sobbed, "I'm sorry, Mom. I doubted you before. But now I know you're the only one who's always been there for me." I hugged Jacob tightly, feeling all the pain dissolve, leaving only a choked happiness. And Chloe? She stood there like a statue, her face ashen. The spectators whispered their criticisms. So she was the one fabricating things. How heartless, daring to destroy a mother-son bond. The judge struck the gavel one last time. This session is adjourned. Custody of Jacob belongs to his biological mother, Nancy. The sound was like a liberating bell. I held Jacob's hand tightly and walked out of the court amidst the whispers of the crowd. But this time, the gazes were not of contempt, but of admiration and sympathy. I knew the battle wasn't entirely over. Chloe would have to pay for what she had done. But for me, the most important thing was that I had kept my son, kept Jacob's trust, and more importantly, upheld the truth. The court had ruled, and justice had finally been mine. After the trial, everything turned 180 degrees. If Chloe had once controlled public opinion, pushing me to a dead end, she now became the focus of criticism. The media began to get involved. Reporters who had once shared slanderous posts about me now issued corrections. A local newspaper published an article with a large headline, "Chloe Anderson, the defamer who used tricks to destroy a mother-son bond." Under the article, thousands of furious comments appeared. How could someone be so evil? Exploiting a child for personal revenge, utterly inhuman. The company where Chloe worked also could not stay out of it. Just a few days later, they issued a press release announcing the termination of her contract. Reason: actions that harm the company's reputation and professional ethics. I heard the news on the radio, and a strange feeling arose within me. Not quite joy, but a sense of justice served. Chloe meticulously plotted to destroy me, and now her own honor and career lie in ruins. I saw Chloe one last time when I accidentally passed her on the street. She no longer had her proud demeanor or expensive clothes. Instead, her face was haggard, her eyes averted. A few people recognized her, pointing and whispering, "Look, that's her, the one who lost in court." Chloe lowered her head, walking quickly as if trying to escape. I stopped, watching silently. No curse was needed. Society's contempt was enough to crush her. But this was only the beginning of the tragedy Chloe would endure. After being fired, Chloe tried to salvage her last shred of dignity by seeking out old friends, hoping for sympathy. But instead of comforting embraces, she only received cold stares and accusations. During one meeting, a friend bluntly said, "Chloe, we can't believe you could be so heartless. You ruined a mother's life for personal revenge? Sorry, we don't want to be involved." Those who once praised and admired her now uniformly deleted her phone number and blocked her on social media. Chloe gradually became an ostracized name within her own circle of close friends. Worse still, her family no longer wanted to stand by her side. Her older sister, who had often protected Chloe, finally uttered words of estrangement. "You've disappointed our parents. From childhood, everyone indulged you, but you never appreciated it. Now you've destroyed everything yourself. Don't expect us to defend you again." And Chloe's parents. They quietly moved, cut off contact, unable to bear the public pressure and shame their daughter brought. Chloe was left alone, living within 4 cold walls. Rumors spread that Chloe's fiancé had also backed out, canceling the engagement immediately after the trial. The reason was stated plainly: I cannot live with a woman known for defamation and malice. In just a few weeks, Chloe lost everything: her job, friends, love, even her family. From someone who once sat on high, confidently manipulating public opinion, she had become a name scorned and despised by everyone. I heard about these events from Linda and some neighbors. Someone asked me, "Nancy, are you gloating now that Chloe has fallen into such a plight?" I remained silent. Deep down, I felt no gloating, only a sense of release, because what mattered most to me was not Chloe's suffering, but that I had kept Jacob, preserving the mother-son bond she had tried to sever. But life didn't stop there for Chloe. After losing all her honor and familial ties, she had to face the bitterest truth.
societal abandonment. As time passed, the name Chloe Anderson gradually became a negative symbol in the community. Whenever fabricated incidents or false rumors spread to ruin others were mentioned, she was used as a prime example. No company would hire her. Job applications were rejected as soon as employers searched Chloe Anderson online and found a flood of articles about the trial. Chloe, once an office worker with a stable income, now drifted from one job to another, serving food or cleaning, but could only last a few days before being fired for not wanting to be associated with someone notorious. Friends turned their backs, family abandoned her, her career was shattered. Chloe fell into destitution. I heard she had to move into a dilapidated rented room in the suburbs, living off her meager savings. Whenever she went out, she wore a sloppy hat, covering her face, afraid of being recognized. But the more she hid, the more shame clung to her. Even worse, the online community wouldn't leave her in peace. Occasionally, someone would repost old edited videos with a sarcastic caption. "How is the fake news spreader doing now?" The comments below were filled with mockery. "Serves her right. The price of wickedness." Chloe gradually became gaunt, her face hollowed, her eyes vacant. From someone who once sat with a straight back and sharp eyes, she was now just a dejected shadow in the crowd, unnoticed by anyone. Once, Linda mentioned that she had stumbled upon Chloe on the street. She was sitting alone on a park bench, wearing a worn-out coat, her shoes tattered, her gaze fixed on nothing in particular. Beside her was a half-eaten bag of cheap bread. No pride remained, only a pitiable solitude. And that was the just desserts. Chloe had plotted and schemed to destroy the mother-child bond between my mother and me, but in the end, all she received was rejection, humiliation, and a miserable life. I heard about it, but I didn't smile, nor did I feel any glee. I only felt a sharp pang of sadness in my heart. Because sometimes the wicked destroy themselves without needing anyone to retaliate. In the days following her ostracization by society, Chloe lived like a wandering ghost. By day, she hid in a damp, moldy rented room. By night, she tossed and turned, plagued by nightmares. In her dreams, Chloe always saw Jacob's face looking at her with resentment, while I stood there with a cold, proud gaze. At first, Chloe stubbornly believed it was all due to Lucky Nancy. But the deeper she sank, the more isolated she became, the more she realized everything stemmed from her own malice and pettiness. One evening, Chloe, trembling, held her old phone, searching for my number. The screen was blurred by the sweat on her hands. She typed out a long message. "Nancy, I was wrong. I was too hateful, too selfish. I shouldn't have interfered between you and your mother. I just want to ask for your forgiveness. If possible, let me see Jacob one last time, so I can apologize." Chloe pressed send, then waited in silence. Her heart pounded, hoping for some miracle, but the screen only displayed one cold line. Message blocked. She dropped the phone, her shoulders shaking, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in years, Chloe saw herself as small and pathetic. No longer public opinion to manipulate, no one to cheer her on, only the stark truth. She had destroyed her own life. In the sleepless nights that followed, Chloe began to write a diary, each word scrawled as a way to unload her torment. "I was wrong. I want to atone. But is there anyone in this world who can forgive someone who has caused so much suffering like me?" After her message was blocked, Chloe fell into a state of panic. She lost her appetite and sleep, her face hollowed, dark circles under her eyes. Every night, Chloe would jolt awake from nightmares. In her dreams, Jacob stood in the middle of a basketball court, worn-out shoes on his feet, looking at her with icy eyes. "You ruined everything. You stole the trust between my mother and me." Then I appeared behind him, embracing Jacob. I turned to Chloe and uttered just one sentence. "Justice has chosen our side." Then both of them slowly faded away, leaving Chloe standing alone in the endless void.
Each time she would cry, curling up in the darkness. In despair, Chloe tried one more time. She wrote a letter by hand, trembling as she sent it to my old address. The letter was filled with words of self-reproach. "Nancy, I know I don't deserve it, but please, give me one chance. I have no friends, no family, no job. I just want to say, I am truly sorry. Let me see Jacob one time, just so I can apologize." The letter was sent, but weeks passed and Chloe received no reply. Until one day the postman returned the envelope with a note. Addressee refused. Holding the returned letter, Chloe sobbed uncontrollably. In that moment, she truly understood. Not everyone can undo their mistakes. Not every wound can be healed. Some mistakes, once made, leave no room for forgiveness. Day after day, Chloe was consumed by torment. Every step outside was torture, subjected to the scrutiny and pointing fingers of the world. And upon returning to her rented room, darkness and silence enveloped her, an invisible sentence that would never end. Chloe began to wonder, is this the harshest punishment? Not imprisonment, but to be turned away by the entire world, to be tormented by my own conscience to the extreme. That winter, the city was colder than ever. In the damp, cramped room, Chloe shivered on the old bed, the torn blanket insufficient to cover her. Outside, the wind howled, while inside, the thick silence seemed to suffocate her breath. She drifted off in exhaustion, and the nightmares returned. In her dream, Jacob stood right in front of her, wearing shiny new basketball shoes, smiling radiantly at me, not at Chloe. The scene repeated itself as a form of punishment. Each time Jacob turned away, Chloe cried out in despair, "Jacob, please listen to me. I'm sorry. Don't abandon me." But no one heard. My laughter and Jacob's echoed, fading into the distance, leaving Chloe alone in the endless darkness. When she woke, her pillow was soaked with tears. Chloe sat in a daze, her eyes vacant. Everything around her was now emptiness. No family, no friends, no job, no honor. Only one thing remained: belated regret. She picked up her pen countless times, writing more letters that were never sent. If I could go back, I would never sow lies. Nancy, Jacob, please forgive me, even if only in my dreams. But these letters piled up, gathering dust in the musty room, never to be read by anyone. In the end, Chloe was left with only herself and the whispers of the past. She began talking to the emptiness, confessing her wrongdoings as if hoping heaven would hear. I was wrong, but it's too late, isn't it? No one answered. The whole world had abandoned Chloe, but the greatest punishment lay within her own mind, living each day in endless torment, haunted by dreams of Jacob and Nancy, those she had tried to destroy, but ultimately destroyed herself. Regretful, but too late to turn back. After all, my life and Jacob's finally returned to peace. The stressful days, tears, pain, and heavy judgment from public opinion gradually receded into the past. Every morning I saw Jacob radiantly preparing for school in the new basketball shoes I had saved up for so long. My son no longer had eyes of doubt or distance, but instead absolute trust. He would often hug me and whisper, "Mom, I'm sorry for ever doubting you. You are the only one who has always been there for me, no matter what happened." I listened, smiling and shedding tears. To me, that was the greatest recognition, a gift more precious than any verdict of justice. We gradually returned to a simple and happy rhythm of life. In the evenings, mother and son would cook together, eat dinner under the warm yellow light. Then Jacob would tell me about his day at school, and I would listen as if wanting to remember every word. These moments were small, but after so many tribulations, I found them to be exponentially more sacred. On some weekends, I would take Jacob to the basketball court. Watching my son run, jump, and score amidst the cheers of his friends, my heart swelled with pride. I knew his journey ahead would be long, but as long as I could, I would always be by his side, a strong support for him. I no longer feared gossip, nor did I tremble before public opinion. Because I had understood one thing clearly. True love doesn't need to be proven with words, but is etched in actions, in every drop of sweat, in every silent sacrifice. And that love, Jacob finally saw. Time passed, and Jacob grew more mature. He wasn't only a good student, but also shone brighter on the basketball court. Every time the school organized a tournament, I would sit in the stands, my heart pounding as I watched my son score. Jacob's eyes would always find me, his radiant smile seeming to say, "Mom, I did it." Seeing my son like that, I felt all my sacrifices were worth it. So many nights of exhausting work, so many times tears fell in silence, all had now turned into sweet drops of honey. Jacob's thoughts became more mature. One time after a game, he held my hand tightly and said seriously, "Mom, when I succeed in the future, I don't just want to buy you a house. I want you to live your own life, happy, free, and no longer having to struggle." That sentence made my heart tremble. I realized Jacob was no longer the innocent boy he used to be. He had become an understanding young man, capable of love and gratitude. From then on, I found new meaning in my life. I began participating in volunteer groups for single mothers. I shared my story about the days of being slandered, of being drowned by public opinion, but still overcoming it with resilience. I wanted to instill in them the belief, even if the world turns its back on you, as long as you hold on to your love for your child, justice and happiness will eventually find you. Whenever I stood before desperate women, seeing hope flicker in their eyes after I spoke, I felt my life truly had meaning. I was no longer just Nancy, the struggling single mother. I had become Nancy, the woman who rose after the storm, capable of giving strength to others. Jacob witnessed all of this, and it was precisely this that helped him grow in love, in lessons of compassion and resilience. I knew that both my son and I were being reborn, finding a new life after a dark period. One late afternoon, Jacob and I sat together on a park bench. The sun was setting, the last rays of the day stretching out, warm like an embrace around us. Jacob leaned his head on my shoulder, his voice gentle. "Mom, I'm so happy. Not because of the shoes, not because of the games, but because I always have you by my side." Hearing that, tears fell from my eyes, but they were tears of peace. So many storms had passed, and I understood clearly. We had fought and won, not just in court, but in the trust of my own son. I replied softly, "Son, remember one thing. True family isn't about blood ties, nor is it about someone sitting beside you pretending to care. Family is the one who always stands by you, even when the whole world turns its back." Jacob nodded and hugged me tightly. In that moment, I knew we had found the peace we had longed for. Since the incident, I continued to engage in volunteer activities, supporting other single mothers. I shared my story to warn them that there are indeed wicked people in this world, ready to shatter the happiness of others. But at the same time, I also wanted them to believe truth, justice, and love will always exist, and they are the strongest forces to overcome any storm. Jacob, meanwhile, continued to nurture his basketball dream. I don't know if he'll become a professional athlete, but I know for sure he will grow up in love, in freedom, and in faith. And for me, that is enough. Our story ends here, but the message echoes on. Never underestimate the power of a mother's love. Never let lies obscure the truth. And remember, true family isn't about blood, but about respect and love. I looked up at the brilliant sky, telling myself, we lost much, but we were also reborn.